Aggression on the roads. Another everyday context in which aggression is frequently observed is driving a car. Most motorists would admit that they become angry with other road users at least occasionally and may have behaved in an aggressive manner towards them. In terms of the situational factors promoting such responses, moving through traffic involves many frustrations. Drivers may find their progress impeded due to a high volume of traffic or through the behavior of other motorists. They may have difficulty finding a free space when they are in a hurry to park their car, or they may feel provoked by the assertive or dangerous driving style of others. Thus, it is not surprising that frustration-related anger is often experienced in a driving context and gives rise to aggressive behavior. In this section, we review the extensive research literature that has examined the role of personal and situational variables affecting aggressive driving. Many studies have found associations between aggressive driving and accident involvement, so understanding risk factors for aggressive driving and the underlying psychological processes has significant practical implications for improving road safety. Definition and measurement of aggressive driving. Aggressive driving may be defined as any behavior intended to physically, emotionally, or psychologically harm another within the driving environment. This definition is consistent with the general definition of aggression as a behavior carried out with the intention of harming another person. It consists of a range of specific actions, which vary in terms of the severity of the harm inflicted and the potential to create dangerous traffic situations. Hennessy and Wiesenthal, 2002, differentiated between mild driver aggression, e.g. horn honking or hand gestures, and driver violence, e.g. fighting or deliberate contact. Aggressive driving motivated by the intention to harm needs to be distinguished from reckless or assertive driving, i.e. driving in a risky and selfish manner, which may cause harm to other drivers, but the harm is accidental rather than deliberate. However, other authors have suggested a broader definition of driving aggression that includes aggressive and reckless assertive driving, defining it as a dysfunctional pattern of social behaviors that constitutes a serious threat to public safety. Most scales eliciting reports of aggressive driving are based on this broader definition, including both hostile aggression, motivated by the intent to harm, such as swearing at other drivers, and instrumental aggression, motivated by the desire to make progress, such as speeding, that constitute a threat to safety on the roads. Aggressive driving, behavior intended to physically, emotionally, or psychologically harm another within the driving environment. Although some authors have used aggressive driving and road rage as interchangeable, and the two constructs clearly overlap, road rage more narrowly denotes extreme acts of aggressive driving. Road rage more narrowly denotes extreme acts of aggressive driving involving assaultive behavior with the intention of causing bodily harm and possible homicide. Road rage is a criminal offense and is far less common than the more general construct of aggressive driving, which includes behaviors such as honking the horn when annoyed or swearing at other drivers. Some authors have identified road rage as a psychological disorder. The most common method of assessing aggressive driving is through driver self-reports. Several instruments have been developed that present different forms of aggressive driving behavior and ask drivers to indicate how frequently they have engaged in each behavior in the past. Reports of aggressive driving obtained through self-reports have been linked to personality traits as risk factors, and also to reports of accident involvement as a correlate of aggressive driving. Moreover, several studies have used modern communication technology, such as beepers or cell phones, to elicit state measures of anger and reports of aggressive driving while participants are actually on the road. Box 7.2 presents items from two instruments used to elicit self-reports of aggressive driving. The Driving Anger Expression Inventory, DAX, by Deffenbacher et al. 2002, measures drivers' general propensity to engage in aggressive behavior when they are angry while driving. It consists of 4 subscales referred to as verbal aggression, personal physical aggression, using one's vehicle to express aggression, and displaced aggression onto people other than the annoying motorist. A fifth subscale measures adaptive, constructive responses to anger-eliciting traffic situations. This subscale should be negatively related to the other four facets and to aggressive driving behavior. Comparing scores on the DAX in Danish drivers in 2008 and 2016, Mahler and Houston 2018, found that the proportion of drivers who reported expressing at least one form of anger in the past 12 months increased from 16% to 26%. The gender difference decreased in the same period. The fact that the largest increase was found among drivers in the most densely populated area around the capital city of Copenhagen is consistent with the view that frustrating driving conditions may precipitate driving anger and aggression. To measure aggressive driving in a specific situation, Hennessy and Wiesenthal's 1999 State Behavior Checklist provides a brief assessment tool for contacting drivers while driving and asking them to indicate whether they engaged in aggressive driving in the previous 5 minutes of their journey. A second, less frequently used approach is to study aggressive driving through behavioral observation in a driving simulator to obtain data analogous to real-life behavior behind the wheel. Participants are exposed to different traffic situations in the virtual reality of the driving simulator to record their aggressive behavior. An example of this method is the study by Bushman et al. 2017 on the effect of a weapon as a cue promoting aggressive behavior that was discussed in Chapter 5. This approach typically yields lower correlations with risk factors or antecedents such as state or trait anger. Box 7.2 Items measuring general and situation-specific aggressive driving behavior. Example items from the Driving Anger Expression Scale, DAX. How often do you generally react or behave in the manner described when you are angry or furious while driving? Verbal aggressive expression. I make negative comments about the other driver aloud. I yell questions like, "Where did you get your license?" Personal physical aggressive expression. I try to get out of the car and tell the other driver off. I try to force the other driver to the side of the road. Use of vehicle to express anger. I drive right up on the other driver's bumper. I speed up to frustrate the other driver. Displaced aggression. I yell at the people who are riding with me. I take my anger out on other people riding with me. Adaptive constructive responses, reverse coding. I try to think of positive things. I pay even closer attention to others driving to avoid accidents. Items from the State Behavior Checklist. Please indicate whether you have employed the following behaviors during the last 5 minutes of this particular commute. Horn honking at other drivers out of frustration, purposely tailgating other drivers, flashing your high beams at another driver out of frustration, hand gestures at other drivers, swearing at other drivers. A good example of the use of driving simulators to observe aggressive driving under controlled conditions is the study by Ellison Potter et al. 2001. Their simulated driving task was designed as follows. The actual simulation task was programmed to include several potentially frustrating events, e.g. jaywalking, slow vehicles ahead, tailgating, general traffic congestion. The simulation included 9 incidents of jaywalking involving 52 pedestrians, 7 traffic lights, all of which were programmed to turn red when the subject approached them, and 116 other vehicles on the road. Hence, participants had the opportunity to hit pedestrians 9 times, run a red light 7 times, and hit another vehicle 116 times. Opportunities for off-road collisions were unlimited. Dependent measures were the average speed, number of red lights run, number of collisions, and number of pedestrians killed. We will turn to the findings from this experiment below. Finally, some field experiments conducted under naturalistic conditions studied the impact of situational variables such as heat, time pressure, or status of the offending car, and used horn honking as a measure of aggressive driving. However, the validity of horn honking as a measure of aggression is questionable, as drivers may also use it as a way of communicating with other drivers that is not necessarily based on intent to harm. Anger and aggressive driving. As shown in Chapter 2, anger is conceptualized as a critical, affective state triggering aggressive behavior, especially in response to frustration and other aversive events. Because moving through traffic can involve many frustrations, the frustration-aggression hypothesis and its extension in the cognitive neo-associationist model of aggression offer theoretical explanations of aggressive driving behavior. A meta-analysis by Nisbet et al. 2007 that included 28 samples found an average correlation of R equals 0.37 between state anger and drivers' aggressive behavior. Individuals differ in their propensity to get angry, and these individual differences are also likely to moderate responses to frustrating traffic situations, as proposed by the state trait model of driving anger by Deffenbacher and colleagues. A meta-analysis that linked dispositional anger to aggressive driving found a significant effect size of moderate magnitude between general proneness to anger and aggressive driving behavior across 33 studies. Individual differences in anger proneness should be related to state anger and driving behavior under stressful, but not under non-stressful driving conditions. Correlational evidence supports this link between trait and state driving anger under high as opposed to low frustration conditions. In support of the state trait model, a driving simulator study by Deffenbacher et al. 2003 found no difference between drivers who scored high and low in dispositional driving anger in low impedance situations, which involved no frustrations, but individual differences in driving anger did predict aggressive driving behavior in high impedance situations. After they were made to drive under conditions where their progress was impeded, participants who scored high on trait driving anger reported significantly more state anger and a greater urge to be verbally and physically aggressive than did participants who scored low on trait anger. A meta-analytic review of 48 studies by Demer et al. 2016 found significant overall correlations between the subscales of the DAX and aggressive driving in the expected direction, with the highest effect sizes for the verbal aggression, R equals 0.41, and the use of the vehicle to express aggression, R equals 0.37. A further meta-analysis by Zhang and Chan 2016 established a small but significant association between driving anger and accident involvement across 17 studies. Personal risk factors of aggressive driving. In addition to trait anger, several other personal characteristics have been linked to aggressive driving behavior. Harrison-Houston 2010 found significant correlations between aggressive driving and boredom susceptibility, i.e., an aversion to repetitive experiences of any kind. Boredom susceptibility is a component of sensation seeking, a personality trait characterized by the need for varied, novel, complex, and intense sensations and experiences to maintain an optimal level of arousal, associated with a high propensity towards risk-taking. Other studies established a link between aggressive driving and high levels of narcissism, defined as a grandiose feeling of superiority and a sense of entitlement that leads to aggression when challenged by others. A driving simulation study with men found that the more participants reported an obsessive passion for driving, example item, I have difficulties controlling my urge to drive, the more aggressively they drove as rated by independent observers. Age. Age is another personal characteristic linked to aggressive driving. Several studies suggest that aggressive driving is more common among younger than among older motorists. There is evidence from official statistics on accident involvement and registered violations, as well as from self-reports, that aggressive driving declines with age. In addition, there is evidence of an interactive effect of gender and age. Young male drivers have a disproportionately high risk of accident involvement and aggressive driving, and the gender gap diminishes with age. Lejunin and Parker 2001 found that age was associated with a decrease in aggressive driving behavior among their male but not their female respondents. Gender and gender-related self-concept. With regard to the role of gender, studies using self-reports of driving behavior overwhelmingly suggest that men are more prone to aggressive driving. In a study of motorists from the UK, Finland, and the Netherlands, Parker et al. 2002 found that male drivers reacted more aggressively than did female drivers when other drivers impeded their progress or showed inconsiderate and impatient driving behavior. Surveys show that men are more likely than women to deliberately violate traffic rules and hold attitudes about driving that may be related to aggressive and reckless driving, such as believing that men's driving skills are superior to women's. Several other studies have confirmed this gender difference. However, when aggressive driving was subdivided into mild driver aggression, e.g. horn honking out of frustration, hand gestures, and driver violence, e.g. physical confrontations, chasing other vehicles, a more differentiated picture of the role of gender differences emerged. Hennessy and Wiesenthal 2001 found that men scored higher on a measure of driving violence than did women, but no gender differences emerged with respect to mild driver aggression. A subsequent study narrowed down the higher prevalence of driving violence in men to a combination of male gender and endorsement of a vengeful attitude to driving. A further body of research has examined gender-related self-concept, rather than biological sex, as a correlate of aggressive driving. Aggression in general and driving aggression in particular have been highlighted as central elements of the masculine gender role. The social role model, Eagley and Wood 1999, posits that gender differences in aggression are the result of an individual's social learning experiences. They are rooted in differential gender role socialization that rewards males for being assertive and dominant, and females for being caring and submissive. Within each gender group, individuals differ in the extent to which they endorse traditional gender stereotypes of masculinity and femininity as part of their self-schemata. A subgroup of men were identified who show an exaggerated endorsement of the masculine gender role in the form of a macho personality. The more men endorsed this macho image of masculinity, the more aggressive driving they were found to report, in a study by Craigie and Fenske 2002. In a study that addressed women's gender-related self-concept, femininity was associated with lower levels of driving aggression when trait aggression was controlled for, suggesting that femininity buffered aggressive driving. Craigie 2005. Assessing both positive and negative facets of male and female participants' gendered self-concept, Craigie 2018 showed that negative masculinity, describing oneself with negative masculine attributes, such as boastful, was positively related to driving anger, but that this link was eliminated for participants scoring high on positive femininity, describing the self with positive feminine attributes, such as tender. Contextual risk factors of aggressive driving. It has already become clear that aggressive driving is not only a function of drivers' personal characteristics, but it is also critically affected by features of the driving context. Two contextual risk factors have received particular attention in research on aggressive driving: traffic congestion and anonymity. In addition, exposure to risk-glorifying media has been examined as an instigator of aggressive driving in the form of intentional violation of traffic rules. Traffic congestion. Consistent with the proposition that frustration may increase aggression, congested traffic conditions that frustrate drivers' goal of making swift progress have been found to precipitate aggressive driving. Hennessy and Wiesenthal 1999 studied commuters whose route was either low or high in traffic volume and contacted them via cell phones during their journey to elicit ratings of driver stress and driver behaviors. Drivers on the high-volume traffic routes reported significantly more acute stress and more aggressive driving behaviors than did commuters on the low-congestion route. Similarly, Harris in Houston 2010 reported that more tailgating occurred in heavy traffic. Hennessy et al. 2000 found significantly higher levels of acute driver stress under high than under low traffic congestion conditions, and in situations of high as opposed to low time urgency, especially for drivers who were disproportionately prone to stress while driving. Anonymity. Aggressive behavior is generally more prevalent under conditions of anonymity, and driving a car provides such conditions. Although it is possible to identify the car, the aggressive driver's personal identity is typically concealed from others. Supporting the role of anonymity, Harris in Houston 2010 found that drivers reported more aggressive driving when they were alone in the car than when passengers were present, and an observational field study by Wiesenthal and Janovic, 1992, found that drivers in cars with tinted windows committed more deliberate violations of traffic rules. However, these correlational findings could be due to differences in the personalities of drivers who chose to drive cars with tinted windows, rather than reflecting the causal role of anonymity. By contrast, Ellison Potter et al. 2001 used an experimental manipulation of anonymity by telling their participants to imagine that the vehicle assigned to them in the driving simulator was an open-top convertible that would enable others to identify them personally, no anonymity, or that the vehicle was a convertible with the top closed so that others would be able to identify the car but not them personally, anonymity. A significant effect of the anonymity manipulation was found on all measures of aggressive driving. De-individuation. Participants drove faster in the anonymous condition, on average 43 miles an hour or 69 kilometers an hour, than in the identifiable condition, on average 40 miles an hour or 64 kilometers an hour. Moreover, they drove through more red lights, were involved in more collisions, and killed more pedestrians, as shown in Figure 7.2. Figure 7.2, differences in aggressive driving as a function of driver anonymity. So, the y-axis is just numbers from 0 to 3, and the x-axis is 3 categories. It's a side-by-side bar graph of collisions, red lights run, and pedestrians killed, and the 2 sets of bars are anonymous and identifiable. Okay, so for each option, you can see that the anonymous driver... Okay, so the y-axis must be like number of collisions, number of red lights run, number of pedestrians killed. So yeah, it's higher in each case for the anonymous driver. Risk-glorifying media. A final contextual factor relevant to the understanding of aggressive driving is the use of risk-glorifying media. For example, racing games in which drivers engage in speeding and other high-risk maneuvers may contribute to more risky driving behavior in the real world, which includes aggressive behavior toward other drivers. A series of studies by Fisher and colleagues demonstrated that playing virtual racing games increased players' positive evaluations of risk-taking, the accessibility of risk-promoting cognitions, and also risky behavior in a driving simulator. Fisher et al. 2009 showed that the effects were evident only for racing games in which the violation of traffic rules was rewarded, and were mediated by a change in participant self-concept in the direction of seeing themselves as reckless drivers. A meta-analysis including 11 studies found a moderate overall effect size between the use of media that glorify risky driving and risk-taking behavior in simulated driving contexts. Clarifying the psychological pathway from the use of risk-glorifying media to aggressive driver, Vingelis et al. 2016 found a positive association between playing drive 'em up video games and self-reported violations of traffic rules when driving on the roads, which was mediated by the extent to which participants had a self-concept as risky drivers. Drive 'em up games, such as Carmageddon or Burnout, involve intentionally crashing into other vehicles and killing pedestrians, and the finding that extensive engagement in these behaviors in the virtual reality of video games is linked to driving behavior in real life is consistent with a social learning account of media influences. Also consistent with this explanation, the authors did not find a link between playing non-violent, circuit racing games, which reward skillful, accurate driving, and aggressive driving behavior in real life.